Zoos let us see nature's wonders up close, bringing us face to face with animals we'd never encounter in everyday life.
Oh, man!
While some see them as places of learning, others debate the ethics of captivity. But one thing's for sure, zoos have seen some truly shocking moments. From heartwarming animal interactions to wild encounters you wouldn't believe, join us as we count down 20 of the most unbelievable zoo moments ever caught on camera. Black swans feeding the fish. You won't believe what these black swans were caught doing. A couple of them were filmed feeding koi fish in a pond. Yes, you read that right. Feeding, not eating. Usually birds are snatching fish up for dinner, not handing out snacks. Nobody taught these swans to do it. It all happened naturally. The swans get dry pellets from the zookeepers, but they can't just swallow them as is. So, they dip the food into the water to soften it up. But guess who shows up when they do that? The koi. These curious fish swim right up to see what's going on. Over time, the swans got used to their little audience. Instead of gobbling up their food, they started spreading it around, practically inviting the koi to join the feast. It's not something you'd expect from these independent birds, but it's a heartwarming and totally unexpected scene where nature shows a softer side. Dancing monkey. Caught at the Calgary Zoo, a gorilla decided it was time to show off some moves. Out of nowhere, this big guy started spinning and splashing around in a puddle like a pro dancer who didn't care if anyone was watching. No music needed, just pure fun. At first, it seemed like the gorilla was in its own world, dancing like nobody was watching. Spin, splash, repeat. The crowd was loving it, but after a few more twirls, the gorilla suddenly stopped, almost like it realized, oh wait, people are watching me. With a quick glance around, the gorilla casually strolled away, leaving everyone wondering what they'd just witnessed. Maybe it was just a quick private party that wasn't meant to last too long. Either way, it was a moment no one saw coming. Rhino versus the geese. Everyone knows geese have an attitude problem, but this moment at the zoo took things to another level. It all started with a rhino minding its own business, grazing peacefully. Nearby, a pair of geese floated on the water, keeping an eye on the massive animal. At first, everything seemed normal, until the rhino wandered a little too close. One of the geese panicked and took off, flapping away in a hurry. That was all it took to set off its partner. The remaining goose, now furious, started honking like crazy. What happened next left everyone watching in shock. The huge, powerful rhino suddenly bolted, running away like it had just seen a ghost. The sight of a beast that could crush anything in its path fleeing from a couple of angry birds had people laughing in disbelief. The geese, small but fearless, had somehow won the standoff without even lifting a feather. It just goes to show, sometimes the loudest voice wins, no matter how big the opponent. Thirsty chimp. Monkeys are smart, no doubt about it. So, when they're stuck behind glass at a zoo, they don't just sit around and accept their situation. If they want something, they'll find a way to get it. And this chimp? He wanted a drink. A woman walked up to his enclosure with a bag of snacks and a cold drink. Right away, the chimp locked onto it. He didn't care about making friends or putting on a show. He had one goal, getting whatever was inside that bag. He started pointing at it over and over, making sure she got the message. At first, she thought he wanted a banana, so she held one up. But the chimp ignored it. He wasn't interested in fruit. He wanted that cold drink. Seeing how determined he was, the woman decided to help. But there was a problem. The glass wall between them. No way to pass it through, right? Wrong. The chimp knew exactly what to do. He motioned toward a small hole in the wall, showing her where to pour. She followed his lead, and sure enough, the drink flowed right through. The chimp got what he wanted, sipping happily like a genius who just pulled off the perfect plan. Escape and return. Not every animal dreams of breaking free from the zoo. In fact, one hippo proved that sometimes home is where the heart is, even if home has fences. Somehow, this big guy found his way out of his enclosure, slipping through an open security gate like it was no big deal. You'd think a loose hippo would lead to absolute chaos, right? People running, alarms blaring, total panic? Well, not this time. Instead of charging through the streets or making a mess, the hippo just took a slow, casual stroll. He wandered around, sniffed the air, and probably wondered if the outside world had anything better to offer. Turns out, it didn't. After a few minutes of sightseeing, the hippo made a decision. This adventure wasn't worth the trouble. Without any fuss, he simply turned around and walked right back into the zoo, as if he had just stepped out for some fresh air. It's a funny reminder that even the wildest animals sometimes prefer the comfort of what they know. Freedom is great and all, but a familiar place with food and no worries? That's even better. Bears take control. In a zoo, the rules are pretty simple. Zookeepers run the show. Well, at least most of the time. But when bears are involved, let's be honest, the real bosses are the ones with claws and teeth. Now, we don't know what led up to this moment, but when the camera starts rolling, it's pure madness. A couple of zookeepers are seen sprinting into a pool with bears hot on their heels. At first glance, it looks like a disaster waiting to happen. But surprisingly, this isn't a case of zookeepers running for their lives. It's just another day at work. Turns out, they're not just keeping the bears entertained. They're also dodging serious danger. These guys are running, jumping, and even hand-feeding the bears like it's no big deal. At one point, they even try to get a bear to take food straight from a keeper's mouth. Yeah, you read that right. One wrong move, and it's not just a job hazard, it's a trip to the hospital. You've got to give them credit, though. Working up close with animals this powerful takes guts. But let's be real. There's a fine line between bravery and bad decisions, and these guys are dancing all over it. Let them fight. A trip to the zoo is supposed to be relaxing, watching animals, snapping pictures, maybe grabbing some snacks. But sometimes things take a turn, and visitors get way more than they bargained for. Take this moment, for example. Everything seemed normal. The gorillas were just hanging out, doing their usual thing while the crowd watched. But then, out of nowhere, tension filled the air. In the blink of an eye, two massive silverbacks squared up, and before anyone could process what was happening, fists were flying. Now, if you've never seen gorillas fight, let's just say it's not a little scuffle. These animals are pure muscle, and when they go at it, it's intense. The crowd, once full of excited chatter, quickly went silent. Someone in the background nervously asked, "Where are the zookeepers?" But honestly, what were they supposed to do? Walk in and break it up? Yeah, right. For a moment, the zoo felt less like a family-friendly attraction and more like a front-row seat to a wild jungle battle. And just like that, the peaceful zoo vibes were gone, replaced with raw, unpredictable nature. It was a quick but chilling reminder. No matter how many fences or walls we build, wild animals will always be wild. White tiger hunts caretaker. Some lessons in life come easy, others not so much. This caretaker at the Moscow Zoo learned the hard way that when you're around a predator, you should never let your guard down. At first, it looks like just another ordinary moment. He's standing outside the white tiger's enclosure, probably enjoying a quick break. But something's off. The tiger, moving with eerie precision, is creeping up behind him, eyes locked, muscles tense. Even through the thick glass, you can feel the tension building. The guy filming sees it coming. He warns the caretaker, but let's be honest, there's not much he can do at this point. The tiger is in full hunting mode, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then, the caretaker shifts. That's all it takes. In a flash, the tiger lunges, massive paws extended, teeth bared, only to slam headfirst into the glass barrier. For a moment, the tiger just stands there, probably embarrassed, before slinking away. But make no mistake, if that glass hadn't been there, this would have ended very differently. The tiger wasn't playing. He was hunting. So, if you ever find yourself face to face with a big cat, whether at a zoo or anywhere else, just remember, the only thing standing between you and lunch might just be a few inches of glass. Goose versus giraffes. Some animal encounters are so weird you'd swear they were made up, but this one, unreal % real. At the Brookfield Zoo, a goose decided it had zero tolerance for giraffes. Yes, giraffes. And made sure everyone knew it. The scene started off calm. A group of geese were waddling through, minding their business, when three massive giraffes strolled over. No aggression, no bad intentions, just casual curiosity. But one goose? Oh, it wasn't having any of it. Out of nowhere, the little bird launched itself into the air, flapping its wings like a maniac and charging straight at the giraffes. These towering, long-necked giants, who could have crushed it with a single step, just stood there, visibly confused. Why was this tiny, angry bird attacking them? The whole thing was ridiculous. The goose, barely knee-high compared to its opponents, was acting like it was in a heavyweight championship match. Meanwhile, the giraffes, clearly baffled, just stared, probably wondering what kind of bad day this bird was having. In the end, the goose won. Not because it hurt the giraffes, but because it made them so uncomfortable they just walked away. Lesson learned. Size doesn't always win a fight. But if you've ever dealt with an angry goose, you already knew that. Lion lunges at boy. If there's one thing to remember about lions, it's this: never turn your back on one. This little boy had to learn that lesson the hard way, but thankfully, a thick glass wall had his back. It all happened during a trip to a Japanese zoo. The boy, full of excitement, ran up to the lion enclosure, eager to get a close-up look at the so-called king of the jungle. Turns out, the feeling was mutual. From the second the boy stepped forward, the lion locked in on him, crouching low, tail twitching, eyes locked. At first, it just seemed like curiosity. But then, boom! The moment the kid turned around, the lion launched itself forward in a full-speed pounce and smacked face first into the glass barrier. 1 second, it thought it had an easy meal or maybe a new playmate, and the next, instant regret. Zoo officials later claimed the lion was just being playful. Sure, because nothing says playtime like a 400-pound predator sprinting at full speed toward a tiny human. The good news? The kid was completely fine, blissfully unaware of what almost happened. But if he ever finds himself face to face with a big cat again, he'll probably remember one thing. Unless there's a thick glass wall between you and the lion, never turn your back. Dancing bear. Most people go to the zoo expecting to see animals eat, sleep, or maybe take a lazy stroll around their enclosures. But no one was prepared for what this polar bear had in store. Standing on its hind legs, the massive bear began to sway, bounce, and twist like it was performing on stage. At first, the crowd thought it was just stretching, but then it kept going, moving in perfect rhythm as if it could hear music no one else could. Parents and kids stood there, wide-eyed, some laughing, some recording, all completely entertained. One person even joked that the bear must have been practicing in secret for a talent show. Of course, we'll never know where it picked up these moves, but one thing is clear: this bear has more rhythm than most humans. If there were ever a Dancing with the Stars Animal Edition, this polar bear would be the one to beat. Who knows? Maybe even the famous Coca-Cola bears would be taking notes. Angry giraffe chases tourists. When people think of dangerous animals, giraffes are usually at the bottom of the list. They're tall, gentle-looking, and spend most of their time munching on leaves. But as this footage from Kenya's Masai Mara Game Reserve proves, they aren't always as friendly as they seem. It all started during a routine safari tour. A group of tourists was cruising along in their vehicle when a giraffe suddenly locked eyes with them. Maybe it was just in a bad mood, or perhaps the truck did something to annoy it. Whatever the reason, the giraffe wasn't happy. Without warning, it started running full speed toward the vehicle, closing the distance faster than anyone expected. The driver had no choice but to speed up, but the giraffe wasn't giving up that easily. At one point, it even got ahead of the truck, forcing the driver to swerve just in time to avoid what could have been a nasty crash. Most people think of giraffes as peaceful, leaf-loving animals, but moments like this show they can be just as unpredictable as any wild creature. Next time you see a giraffe staring you down, maybe don't assume it's just curious. It might just be deciding whether to chase you out of its territory. Crocodiles fighting. When you hear about two crocodiles going head-to-head, you probably picture a violent, action-packed battle. Snapping jaws, thrashing tails, and pure chaos. But this fight? It was more like a slow, awkward staring contest that neither side really knew how to win. It all started with the two crocs sizing each other up, moving in circles like a couple of boxers waiting for the perfect moment to strike. You'd expect one of them to launch into an explosive attack, but nope. Instead, they took their sweet time, throwing cautious little bites here and there, almost like they were testing the waters. The fight never turned into the all-out brawl people were expecting. It was more of a patience game, a battle of endurance rather than brute force. After a few more slow-motion bites and a lot of hissing, the two eventually decided they'd had enough. Neither had a clear victory, and both slinked away as if they just realized they had better things to do. It's not every day you see a crocodile fight that looks more like a strategic game of chess than a violent showdown. But if nothing else, it proves that even the toughest creatures know when to walk away. Orangutan learns to saw wood. We all know monkeys are smart, but this orangutan, she's on a whole different level. Forget swinging from trees. This one has picked up a new skill, woodworking, and she's doing it better than most of us. Inside her enclosure, she grabs a saw, holds a branch steady with her feet, and gets to work like she's been doing this her whole life. With careful precision, she saws right through the wood, splitting it in two like a pro. If you didn't know any better, you'd think she was a carpenter in a past life. Turns out she didn't just figure this out on her own, she learned by watching construction workers. So yes, the saying is true, monkey see, monkey do, or in this case, monkey saw. But things get even weirder when a robotic orangutan joins in, copying her every move. Now it's a full-on sawing competition. Who wins? Well, let's just say the real orangutan takes home the trophy. Not because she's better, but because, well, she's alive. Honestly, watching her work makes me rethink my own DIY skills. If an orangutan can handle power tools better than me, maybe I should stick to calling a handyman. Before we move on, it is time for today's subscriber's pick. Take a look at this picture. It's the kind of moment that makes your heart stop. A young boy somehow made his way into a lion's enclosure, getting dangerously close to the massive predator. In the first image, he appears to be hugging the lion, but as we all know, wild animals aren't cuddly pets. The second image shows the terrifying aftermath, one that could have ended in absolute tragedy. Reports say the boy climbed over the barrier, wanting to get closer to the lion. But the big cat, startled and irritated, reacted the only way a wild predator knows how. Zoo staff rushed in just in time, and though the boy was injured, he miraculously survived. This is why safety barriers exist. Wild animals are unpredictable, but sometimes humans are even more reckless. What are your thoughts on this shocking moment? Let us know in the comments. Orangutan kisses a pregnant woman. At first, it seemed like just another day at the zoo for Naomi Davies and her fiancé. She was 4 months pregnant, enjoying a stroll through the exhibits, when something incredible happened. Something that proved just how deep the emotional world of animals really is. As Naomi stood by the orangutan enclosure, a mother orangutan and her baby took notice of her. But instead of just staring curiously, the younger orangutan walked up to the glass, placed its tiny lips right where Naomi's belly was, and gently kissed it. For a moment, Naomi was speechless. Did the orangutan really understand? It sure seemed like it. The mother orangutan, who had recently given birth herself, watched Naomi with what felt like quiet recognition, as if she understood what it meant to be carrying a child. Naomi later said that the moment was a powerful reminder that motherhood, in any form, creates a bond beyond words. Human or animal, the love and instinct to protect a child is universal. She even thought about returning to the zoo one day with her baby, just to see if the orangutans would remember them. Now, wouldn't that be something? Elephant eats cell phone. A group of tourists was having the time of their lives, feeding an elephant and getting up close with the giant creature. One woman was happily handing out treats, while her friend focused on capturing the perfect shot of the experience. But here's the thing about elephants. They don't exactly have a great sense of what's food and what isn't. So, when the woman held out her phone, the elephant, thinking it was another snack, did what any hungry animal would do. It ate it. Yep, in one quick motion, her phone disappeared right into the elephant's massive mouth. Imagine the sheer horror of watching your expensive smartphone slide down an animal's throat, knowing full well where it was headed next. Of course, nature took its course, and the phone was eventually retrieved. But let's just say the process wasn't glamorous. Someone had to dig through a massive, steaming pile of, you guessed it, elephant dung. Not exactly a job you'd want to put on your resume. The moral of the story? If an elephant sees something apple-shaped, it's going in its mouth, whether it's fruit or your phone. Man versus lion. What happens when human strength goes up against pure animal power? Well, 3 WWE wrestlers, Ricochet, Fabian Eichner, and Killian Dane, decided to find out by taking on a lion in a tug-of-war at a zoo. Sounds insane, right? The setup was completely safe, of course. A thick rope was positioned between the wrestlers and the lion, ensuring that neither side could actually harm the other. With their muscles flexed and determination at an all-time high, the wrestlers grabbed the rope, ready to prove their might. But here's the thing, a lion doesn't care how many hours you spend in the gym. As soon as the challenge began, the big cat clamped down on the rope with its powerful jaws and yanked. The wrestlers pulled back with everything they had, gritting their teeth and straining their muscles. For a moment, it seemed like they might hold their ground, but then reality hit. The lion barely looked like it was trying, yet the wrestlers were already losing ground. It wasn't even close. The lion's raw power was on a whole different level. After a short but brutal struggle, the wrestlers had no choice but to admit defeat. The lion had barely broken a sweat, while the humans were left gasping for air. Lion hugs tourists. Imagine you're on a relaxing safari, taking in the scenery, when suddenly, a lion hops on your tour bus. Sounds like the start of a horror movie, right? Well, that's exactly what happened at Crimea's Taigan Safari Park. Oleg Zubkov, the bus driver, was calmly navigating the tour when out of nowhere, a fully grown lion decided to climb right in. Now, most people would panic, scream, or maybe even pass out, but not these tourists. Instead of freaking out, they just sat there. The lion, surprisingly playful, immediately went for the passenger in the front seat, not with claws or teeth, but with affectionate nuzzles. The massive animal forced both the driver and the woman to climb out of their seats simply because it was too big to fit comfortably. Then, as if things couldn't get weirder, the lion started licking one tourist's face. At this point, Oleg kindly informed the group that they were free to leave if they wanted, and yet, one brave or insane tourist refused. Listen, if a lion started licking my face, I wouldn't just leave the bus, I'd be on the next flight out of the country. But hey, some people enjoy living on the edge. Number 18, gorilla fight. When it comes to males clashing over territory, status, or just plain ego, it doesn't matter if they're human or animal. A fight is almost guaranteed. But when the contenders are two massive silverback gorillas, things get downright explosive. This intense moment unfolded at the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. It started with one of the gorillas suddenly charging toward the glass barrier, swinging its fist as if throwing down a challenge. But its real focus wasn't the glass. It was another silverback standing at the back of the enclosure. In an instant, the energy shifted. The two gorillas locked eyes, and within seconds, the fight was on. This wasn't just some heated argument or minor scuffle. These giants meant business. The sheer power behind every move was something straight out of a wildlife documentary, except this time, it was happening right in front of stunned zoo visitors. Fists flew, muscles tensed, and for a brief but intense moment, they unleashed their full strength against each other. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. No dramatic victory, no long standoff. Both gorillas seemed to decide the fight wasn't worth it and backed off. Rhino escape. If you're a security guard at a zoo, your number one job is simple: keep the animals inside. That means staying alert, paying attention, and definitely not dozing off on the job. Unfortunately, one guard at Ramat Gan Safari Park in Tel Aviv, Israel, completely missed that memo. Thanks to his unexpected nap, 3 full-grown rhinos, Rihanna, Karen Pellis, and Carnabella, walked straight out of their enclosure and right onto a public road. That's right, 3 massive, unpredictable rhinos casually strolling past traffic like it was just another Tuesday. How did this happen? Well, security footage later revealed the answer. The side gate was left open, and the rhinos didn't hesitate to take advantage of the opportunity. Because, let's be honest, if you were a rhino stuck in the same routine every day, wouldn't you be a little curious about what's beyond the fence? Luckily, a quick-thinking zoo manager saw what was happening and immediately took off after them. Now, I don't know what kind of rhino whispering skills this guy has, but somehow he managed to convince them to turn around and head back to their enclosure. A miracle, really. As for the security guard, fired on the spot, and rightfully so. Because let's be real, if you work at a zoo and let rhinos escape because you couldn't stay awake, you probably need a career change. If there's one animal you really don't want wandering into morning traffic, it's a 2,000-pound rhino. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.